Joy is something that you own and that you're responsible for. And times like now make it very, very easy for us to be robbed of every bit of joy that we have.
Welcome to another episode of Friday Five with Dave Adams. Today I'm going to be speaking with Chrissy Siders, CEO of CPFCU, soon to be True Community Credit Union. She joined the credit union in 1998 as a part-time teller, worked in many operational positions with an emphasis on security, fraud, internal audit, and risk management, and she became CEO in 2017. She actually obtained her BA in criminal justice from Michigan State University and her MBA from Spring Arbor University in 2010. She's very involved in her community. She serves as an adjunct professor at Spring Arbor University in both her undergraduate and graduate programs. She chairs the Jackson College and Career Access Center Board and the Henry Ford Allegiance Health Hospice Board. She is the treasurer for the Jackson County Chamber of Commerce and serves on the board of the Enterprise Group and is a trustee on the Henry Ford Allegiance Health Board. Chrissy is also an alternate board director of the Michigan Credit Union League. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation with Chrissy Siders. Hi, Chrissy Siders. Welcome to the broadcast. It's good to have you on.
Hello, how are you?
Doing great. And I love the festive holiday decorations behind you. Thanks for keeping us in the Christmas spirit.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I've been looking forward to this. I've known you really the whole time I've been in Michigan for 23 years, but your bio does make me feel a little bit old because you were arriving at the credit union and getting married about the time that I arrived in Michigan some 23 years ago, and you've had a great career progression there at CPFCU. So as I was reading your bio, wow, you've been doing a lot since you took over just a couple short years ago as CEO. The rebranding of the credit union, an exciting new brand to be announced in January, a merger that you're finalizing, and lots of other things that you have going on. So let's start with your career progression. Go back to your start as a part-time teller and kind of track your career journey for us.
Oh, yeah, it's been interesting. So, I actually was working up at MSU when I was getting my degree there, and had a friend. We were getting ready to move back to Jackson, and had a friend who said, "Hey, there's this credit union I work at." Didn't really know much about credit unions, and she said, "Why don't you come work there?" And I started as a part-time teller. I progressed into proof back when there was a proof department, accounting, and then ultimately graduated from MSU and was offered a position of compliance officer. That's when it was really new to the industry. Then that really is where I think joy and love for the credit union came from and kicked off. And then I transitioned into director of risk management, vice president of risk management, and ultimately in 2017 became the president and CEO.
And I'm sorry that you weren't able to get a quality education at a premier university, but no, I'm kidding. I
I got the
thinking,
best education.
well, you certainly have the best basketball team.
That's right.
And we won't even talk about football this year. It's
No.
not worth a discussion. But yeah, so your background with a lot of emphasis on risk management and compliance and also, I mean, just operations. How does that help you as you take over as CEO to have been literally in the trenches working as a teller and working in operations for those many years?
I actually think it made all the difference as I was interviewing for the position and going through the process, which was pretty intense. One of the things that I was very, very thankful for was my, I guess, depth of knowledge inside of the organization, especially when you work in a risk management and an internal audit function. You touch every part of the organization. And from a compliance perspective, you have to know how everything operates to ensure that you're operating within those fence posts, that the rules and regs provide to us. So I think it made all the difference. What it allows me to do today is understand where we need to take risk and that it needs to be managed risk, but that risk is incredibly important to the success of the organization.
And I may be over stereotyping to say that risk management and compliance are a bit left-brained. and yet you have this gregarious personality, great communication skills. Where did that come from during your transition?
For me, I learned in my role in risk management compliance that I had to get people's buy-in on and what we needed to do. And the best way to do that is to have good relationships with others. I naturally, I think, have a spunky personality just in general. I'm sure that's part of my DNA. The other part is really trying to collaborate with people to say, hey, this is what we need to do. How do we work together to make that happen? Yet I can still, at the end of the day, feel like the credit union is protected and mitigating all of its risks appropriately. And that requires really solid relationships.
When I have these conversations, I always look for parallels in my own life. And, I started out with a very left brain focus. I was an internal auditor at a savings and loan with a finance degree, and I got my MBA. And after a couple of years, I transitioned into a consultant role at the Utah Credit Union League. And of course, over the course of my career, for any of us who work in executive positions, the challenge is to take strong technical skills, but also develop the right brain skill set of problem solving and communications skills. And I think I'm sure that as you are now in this CEO role, and I've read your bio and I've watched some of the things you're doing, I know that you know how important it is to use those communication skills, both internally and externally, with your staff to foster a culture and the way you represent the credit union. You just are completing a big merger and some other big things. So talk about leadership skills now from the perspective of, okay, how you have evolved from a more technical operational side to being in an executive role and taking over as CEO. What are some of the leadership traits or valuable leadership lessons that you think are going to serve you well and that you'd like to share with other credit union executives?
Prior to the pandemic, I would have still had this answer. And now after the pandemic, I think it's even, not after, but, after we've lived with it for 9 months, I feel like it's even more pronounced is trying to instill resiliency inside of the team to be able to flex as much as possible with the changing business environment that we're in. I've been in the industry for 22 years and a lot has happened. We really have gone through two major recessions that have drastically impacted the business, and connecting the where we are as an economy and those outside factors to our organization, and working with exhaustion and frustration and goals and expectations. And for me, there's two things that are key to me as a leader: is making sure that each of my employees has joy every day, and then ensuring that I am working really hard to build resiliency in my team. I think that I'm a better leader today because of all of the things I've been able to lead through, and both personally and professionally, that have built a deep level of resiliency inside of me, and are those things that allow me, I think, to be the leader that I am today. But not everybody is there. So that's the other important thing, is as a leader, meeting each person where they are and developing that resiliency plan for each one.
Well, that's really well said. And what you mentioned with joy, I'd like to have you expand on that a little bit. But as you said, especially in these times where employees are disconnected, they're concerned about their own health and well-being and their families. They're unable to have the human interaction with family, let alone coworkers. So how do you approach that in your role and your from a culture standpoint, helping to create that joy or that feeling of satisfaction with work and the work-life balance?
Yeah, so we do a lot here with, surveying our employees, not just with your typical old school surveys of engagement, but also understanding what would bring people joy each day. And so, for some people, that's, I would like a new pen. For some people, it's like, I would like a great chair to sit on. For some people, it's, I would love for you to take me to lunch and understand what my professional goals are. And so I really take a lot of time to try to understand that with each individual employee. I do meet with each new hire when they come in, and we have those conversations. The resiliency piece is what's so important to tap onto that, because the other thing that I share with everybody is that joy is something that you own and that you're responsible for. And times like now, make it very, very easy for us to be robbed of every bit of joy that we have. And so I try to find, areas of optimism where I can share that with our team. I also try to find areas where I can lift the burden from them, and we remove the weight. And I've got an amazing team of leaders who are so empathetic and who lead with, the people first. We have a value of valuing people over profit, process, and product. And that is something that for me, our leadership team is so stellar at doing, that we just regularly have conversations about how we can bring someone joy. Maybe it's, an extra day off. Maybe it's saying, hey, look, we're not going to do that project because what I'm hearing from you is it's too much. Or maybe it's challenging them a little bit and stretching them a little bit to try to build a little bit of that resiliency, because I know that it's a strategy we have to move forward with. Because I understand that, we're trying to make long-term decisions, right? I read a book by Simon Sinek this year, The Infinite Game, and he talks about finite decisions versus infinite decisions, and making sure that we're not making short-term decisions that are going to hurt us in the long run, but that we need to be thinking with an infinite mindset about how we make sure our credit union is here and it's living out its mission, more than anything.
That's a great concept. And, when you talk about listening, I really think for a leader, it's, ask, listen, and respond. And we don't always connect all the dots. Sometimes we go through the motions and we do the surveys, or we have meetings and we say, tell us what you think or what you're needing. But we don't always listen with empathy, and we certainly don't always follow through and respond. I think it's great, those examples that you gave, because I think that's really how a leader builds credibility with employees, to not just ask, but to demonstrate that after you've asked and listened, that you've actually followed through and done some things.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
wonderful. So let's transition from those great leadership perspectives to the credit union difference. I have observed you as you have grown through your various roles at the credit union. You've been active in advocacy for many years. And so that's how I came to know you and observe you. And I've seen you in meetings with lawmakers talking passionately about our issues and the credit union difference. So let's talk about that oft touted term, credit union difference, and what it means to you and what it means to True Community Credit Union.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of my favorite ones. I drank the Kool-Aid early on, in my career, and we actually ingrained that credit union mission into our own purpose, mission, vision, and values. And the one thing that I tell every single one of my new hires is that we have this awesome opportunity in the industry that we work in, to really attach to people from birth to death, right? And sometimes people think, well, that sounds very morbid, but that's it. And how much joy can you have in attaching to someone's life with your service that you offer from birth to death? And I tell them, though, with that awesome responsibility or opportunity comes a lot of responsibility. And that as a result of that, we have a serious responsibility to move forward that credit union mission, to be that industry that is not just, talking the talk, but we're walking the walk. We're adapting. We're understanding our membership. We're understanding where the economy is. We're understanding diverse groups. Where are we missing the mark every day? And we need to be constantly challenging ourselves to do that. But what better industry than ours to really, when my children were born 19 years ago, my first one opened an account for her, right? And she's now having all of these legacy defining moments. She's bought a car, she's not buying a house. And then my parents have both passed away, and the credit union helped me close out that chapter of their life. And that is something that you can say that you can literally partner with someone for their entire life based on what we do at the credit union. And so I get passionate about it. I'm probably on my soapbox, but I just love what we have the opportunity to do every day.
Wonderfully said. Where are the gaps? If you look at the industry, I know your credit union is heavily focused in Jackson and Jackson County, but you have branches in multiple counties. But where are the gaps, not just for as your credit union looks at the market you serve, but maybe for an industry more broadly in Michigan? What are we missing? What are the things that are mission driven that we need to do more effectively?
Yeah, I think we're missing digging deep. I think sometimes we are very surface level because we have those standard products and services that serve our members, and they certainly attach them, for their life. And I think of one example that I had a member reach out to me a year or so ago, and kind of was talking through some foreclosure concerns related to property taxes. And I thought, we really haven't had a lot of conversation in that lane and understood what our community is really dealing with. And so ultimately we started some meetings with community leaders, met with the Jackson County treasurer, met with some additional people to understand what role could we play there. And so we ultimately developed two products, a foreclosure savings account and a foreclosure loan account. And if a member is looking at actually losing their home, or a community member is looking at losing their home because they can't afford their property taxes, then we have a loan that can assist them to get that year current, to be able, and then we have a savings account that we've paired with it to get them saving for those property taxes. And so I use that example to say, are we digging deep enough into our communities to say, it's not just one of, yeah, I want to address diversity, or, I want to make sure that we're, equitable, or we have inclusion. It's what is the meat of that, and what are the needs in our individual communities? And then how do we pair that responsibility where we're not just given a loan, we're also saying, how do we set up good saving habits for you so that we, one of the big things I often say is I want to take the burden off of others. And so how does our organization do that? And I think it's digging deeper and asking the difficult questions.
I really like that. And you brought up diversity and equity. So I just have to ask you, maybe let's just talk about gender equity and opportunity in the credit union space. Uh, as a country and as a society, we've come a long way in the last 100 years since the suffragist movement led to women finally being able to have the right to vote 100 years ago to now. And we look at gender diversity and equity, and I'm quite proud of the fact that the credit union movement indeed provides lots of opportunities for women. Our four of our 10 largest credit unions are led by women, including Lake Michigan, our largest. And here you are, a couple of years in, at another one of our larger credit unions, True Community. What are your views on opportunities for women? Not just maybe how far we've come, but what we need to focus on still to improve the environment of gender equity for women.
Yeah, I was blessed to have a leader before me in John who, he didn't see gender, he just saw talent, and he was very good at promoting, from a gender perspective. I'm a person who, I'm not an uber feminist. I'm a person who says, I believe that I've been gifted with certain things, certain skills, abilities, and I believe that that's where we need to be digging deeper with people. We need to recognize that, there are certain things that we have all been blessed with from a gender perspective, and those are needed across the board. And how do we just ensure that we're collaborating in that space? I think there's still some pay gaps that we see. And I certainly would say there are many times I walk into a room, especially in some meetings that are more community related, and I'm the only woman at the table. I don't see that in the credit union industry, which is awesome. But I do see that in some other spheres. And so I think there are some areas of our community, whether it be government or other big business, where they should just maybe be asking themselves the question, am I really looking in a diverse way? I think, again, that goes to what I said, though, when you ask about the gaps, is that requires you to ask a difficult question. So are we asking the difficult questions? I do that when I meet with people and they want our financial support, or they want me to join a board. I might look at the makeup of the board and say, so I'm going to be your first woman on the board. Let's make that not an issue. And
Yeah.
let's make sure that works. So it's difficult questions, asking those.
I love that perspective, and I'll come at it from a male, 62-year-old white male perspective. I've written and spoken about this a little bit. I think it's on us as men who still, not so much in credit unions, but credit organizations and outside the credit movement, still large corporations are dominated by male executives. And I think the table stakes are equal pay and benefits and providing for some advancement opportunities. I think where it gets tougher is how we treat each other, and
Mhm.
how we need to do a better job as men of being inclusive, whether it's social outings or happy hour or whatever it is, to make sure that we treat each other the same and provide the opportunities for true mentoring and true opportunity. And I agree with you. I appreciate you bringing up John, my friend John Chris. John
Mhm.
was one of those leaders who got that, and we need more of that all through our society. Let's transition to what we've talked around a little bit, talking about where the gaps are. But here we are during this difficult COVID environment. I was talking with my counterpart, Rick Weaver, uh, earlier this morning, and I said, it feels kind of like we're on this deserted island. We've been there for 8 or 9 months, and we know we're going to be saved. The vaccine's coming, but we're so frustrated. We see the end in sight, and we so want it to be over, and yet we're also in the most dangerous phase of this. And so, for credit unions being essential service providers from the beginning, how is this changing the way you operate now as we sort of cycle into another spike and we're having to serve members differently? Maybe we're better prepared for this next cycle than we were back in March. But how is it changing the way that your credit union is approaching member service right now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We are living in a constant cycle of uncertainty. A decision that's made today changes tomorrow, and for us, that can be incredibly challenging, especially for those employees, like I said, who don't have the resiliency built in them yet. It's just a little bit too much sometimes, and so. We're committed to ensuring that our employees and our members stay healthy. And one of the things that I've kind of said throughout this entire pandemic is I'm going to lead in the middle. So, we all know this is a highly politically charged issue. Our charter change turned into a highly politically charged issue because it was during a pandemic and we were going to be changing to a state charter, right? Highly political. And so I kind of coined that phrase of leading in the middle because I had employees on one side who are petrified, and I have employees on the other side who are saying, what pandemic? And I have members who are in those same spaces. And so we've talked about leading in the middle and that every decision that we make is going to be the best that we possibly can make. But here's the thing that I think is the other piece that I've really talked about a lot with my team. If there ever was a time to be safe to make a decision that might appear to be a reputation risk decision, today is that time. If I have to close a branch because, I have an issue where a lot of employees have to quarantine, or perhaps we've had some sort of a COVID exposure or something like that. Pre-pandemic, our member service would have said, absolutely not. We don't close branches. What does that look like from a reputation standpoint? Again, to my risk management background, we have to understand that there are opportunities actually that are being given to us to flex in a risk way that we wouldn't normally, yet still provide great member service by, talking through our electronic channels, adjusting our hours, ensuring that we're tracking data that tells us when the members will and won't be in the branches, to make sure that if we do have to flex hours, we're flexing the hours that we know are not going to adversely affect the members. And so it's a lot of data driven. It's a lot of leading in the middle, and it's a lot of being willing to take some risk that we know actually today is far less than the risk of what happens if one of our employees gets sick or one of our members, and we would lose them. And so that's where we're adapting.
I love that, leading in the middle. And I've been using a term, finding higher common ground on issues. And so when we talk with our employees, I realize whether it's the racial tensions that tend to get over politicized when we talk about racial equity, or whether it's COVID and masks and the over politicizing of the pandemic from both sides. I think it's really important to find that common ground, just like you described it. Let's keep our employees safe. Let's keep our members safe. And we'll talk about the politics later. And with racial equity, it's kind of the same for me. It's like, let's try to do some good things to advance the whole concept of diversity, equity, inclusion for all. And let's not pit ourselves against each other. I really like that. Well, those perspectives, I think, have been really interesting to me, and certainly really valuable to our listeners. Let's wrap up with just you sharing with us a few personal things about yourself. Help us get better acquainted with Chrissy Siders. I will fill in the blanks, having read your bio. I know you married your high school sweetheart. I know you have two lovely daughters. I know you're family centric. I know you went to a great university or
Yes,
two.
agree.
But go ahead and fill in the blanks. Help us get better acquainted with you.
Yeah, all of that is true. I have been blessed with an amazing life. I had great parents who raised me. I was adopted, and so they raised me and they gave me the best life that I ever could have asked for. And so that's why I'm a family centric person. It's why it's so important to me. I actually boil myself down really simply to most of our new hires after I kind of explain what I love. And I always say, if you want to, boil me down to a few things, I love Jesus, Diet Mountain Dew Fountain Pop, running, and Qdoba. That's me. Pretty simple, and joy. And I really always end with that joy piece. For me, the losses that I've had of losing my mom and dad, relatively young in my life, uh, taught me that there's nothing more important than loving others and choosing joy every day, and that's what has built the resiliency in me and created the person that I am today. But yeah, that's me boiled down incredibly simply into those 4 or 5 things.
Simple but beautiful. Those are great words for all of us. And I've read a bit and thought and pondered a lot about the interrelationship of joy and gratitude. And hearing you express gratitude for what a great life you've lived, despite the personal tragedies and adversity you've had. I think that's just so connected to being able to feel joy and to be able to share it, to be able to have perspective, right? So thank you for that. I think whether it's our adult children or our young children or our coworkers or anybody we interact with, I think those kinds of personal traits are contagious. And I really appreciate you sharing the views the way you did. Well, boy, I have really enjoyed this, Chrissy. You and I have interacted a lot in business settings, but we've never been able to have a conversation like this. And so if there's a silver lining with COVID, as we do Friday 5, I not only get to have these great conversations, but we get to share them with our peers and our friends in the crediting community. So thank you very much for being on the broadcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great.
Well, I really enjoyed the conversation with Chrissy Siders, CEO of True Community Credit Union. I hope you did as well. When we talked about leadership traits, after hearing about Chrissy's career progression, which started as a part-time teller and worked in all types of operations before becoming CEO, Chrissy talked about the importance of resiliency and flexibility, especially in this environment that we're operating in now. She said that it's important to help employees connect the outside needs of members with the inside skill sets of employees. She talked about the importance of joy, both in the personal life and personal lives of employees, but as well as in the way that they treat members. Joy and resiliency. And that is not just about surveying and asking the questions, but it's really listening with empathy and following up with employees to help them get what they need to be engaged and satisfied. She talked about the credit union difference and how unique it is that credit unions get to serve people from birth to death and all the various needs that they have, and how unique that is, and the importance of walking the talk with regard to the credit union mission of people helping people. I have to say, I loved when Chrissy also referenced the importance of leading in the middle as it pertains to COVID and racial justice and all the different issues that challenge our society and that challenge our mindsets as employees. Leading in the middle and finding the opportunity to serve members and employees with what they need. Thanks again to Chrissy Siders. We appreciated the conversation very much. Please join us on future episodes of Friday 5 with Dave Adams.